Hello there. This is part of a multi-part story, but it is not the first part. If you've not listened to Nerdspawn Genesis Part 1, I recommend you go listen to that one first, or don't. Who am I to tell you what to do? After all, I'm not your daddy. Now, let's enter the world of Nerdspawn. Chapter 6. The guys threw their backpacks into the cargo hold of Bruce's car. There wasn't much room in the electric blue Mini Cooper's rear hatch, but with a little shuffling and shoving, it successfully contained the 3 overnight bags. This trip held an abundance of possibilities, but legroom was not going to be one of them. It's time to embark on our grand adventure. Bruce tossed the key fob to Adam. You've got driving duty. Adam fumbled the catch, and the fob fell to the asphalt. Is this because I spent 2 weeks driving for Uber? He bent over to retrieve the fob. Bruce nodded. Yup. He opened the passenger door. Sean held up a hand. Wait, I want to ride shotgun. Bruce nodded again. That's what I figured. He leaned the passenger seat forward and climbed in the back. Don't worry about me. I'll just ball up back here. Adam climbed in the driver's seat and gripped the steering wheel with both hands. I'll be your chauffeur this morning. I hope to provide you with most enjoyable travel. Sean folded himself up to fit in the passenger seat. It's hardly a stretch limo. Bruce poked his head between the 2 seats in front of him. It's great on gas. Don't judge me. He leaned back onto the rear seat. We don't want to try and shove into your truck. True. Sean shrugged. At least it's not as noisy as Adam's car. Adam fired up the subcompact car's ignition. He glanced at the instrument panel and asked, When's the last time you drove anywhere? I don't know. Bruce shifted in a failed attempt to get comfortable in the back seat. Why do you ask? Adam looked over his shoulder. The odometer says it has 734 miles on it. Bruce smiled. I've only had it 2 years. 2 years? Sean furrowed his brow. Why do you even have a car? Sometimes it rains on Wednesdays, answered Bruce. I don't want my comics to get wet, so I'll drive. He held up a finger. Also, sometimes I just like to sit in it and get a little alone time. Our apartment gets kind of crowded. Tell me about it. Adam put the address into the GPS. This thing says we have a little over 650 miles to our destination. That's one long ride. Sean frowned. I'll probably have to pee before we get there. Not me, said Bruce. I avoided liquids this morning. He grinned. But I'm starting to feel my taquitos. I ate the leftovers for breakfast. Yuck! Sean grimaced. Do all 3 of us really need to go? Sorry, pal. Adam put the car in drive. It's too late to back out now. He pressed his foot on the accelerator and drove out of the apartment's parking lot. The tiny blue car pulled onto the road and made its way to Interstate 85. Southbound traffic was heavy as the vehicle merged beneath a sign indicating Atlanta was 245 miles away. Adam plunged the accelerator to the floor and battled for a spot in the interstate's right lane. He wrinkled up his face and said, Something feels strange about opening up that throttle and jumping to a whopping 37 miles an hour. Wow, said Bruce. I don't ever get this bad boy over 35. He pointed toward the dash. Turn on the radio. Sean punched the button and music sprang forth from the car's speakers. Ooh, I like this song. Bruce smiled and bobbed his head. I made up my own words for the chorus. It's coming up soon. Sean looked back at Bruce. It's okay if you don't want to share them. Bruce closed his eyes and sang at the top of his lungs. How many times can I toot till I've sharded? What he lacked in skill, he more than compensated for with enthusiasm. Sean frowned and put his hands over his ears. Adam, make it stop. Bruce continued to sing. Olfactory crimes can't define what I've started. His face coursed with intensity while he crooned. The bearded singer leaned his head back and belted out, I always turn my boxers brown. Sean slammed his hand against the console and turned off the radio. Bruce opened his eyes wide. You didn't like that one? I've got others. He put a hand on his chin. There's one I call Walking Around Passing Gas, and I've got a really great one if Linger comes on. He let his hand drop from his chin. I pretty much work exclusively with the theme of flatulence. I'm sorry, Bruce. We can't risk any more of your songs. Sean turned the radio back on and twisted the knob to find the new station. I want to listen to some of my favorite music, classic rock. He found a station that satisfied him. Awesome, Bruce Springsteen. He looked over his shoulder. Now this is good music. His hand withdrew from the tuning knob. He's got this really great Christmas song. Too bad it's summer and we probably won't get to hear it. We've heard it, said Bruce. Last year, Santa Claus started coming to town on Labor Day and didn't leave until February. He put his fingers in his ears. You've overdosed us on the boss. Adam wrinkled up his nose while he gripped the steering wheel. I don't think we're going to agree on music. He glanced at Sean. Maybe you should put on a podcast. Sean sighed. Fine, but I don't want to listen to our show. He pulled out his phone and tapped on the screen. It seems a little self-indulgent. Can we listen to Heroes and Villains? Said Bruce. I did a great episode on Rhino. It's 3 hours long. Sean shook his head. We've already listened to that episode, buddy. He looked over his shoulder and arched an eyebrow. I've got a crazy idea. Why don't we listen to somebody other than us? He turned his attention back to his phone. Okay. Bruce tried to stretch out on the back seat but found it impossible. Fire up the infinite long box. His knees scraped the car's roof while his head pressed against the tiny rear window. I don't think so. Sean wrinkled his forehead and stared at his phone. I love those guys, but they haven't uploaded an episode in like 2 years. Yeah, Bruce nodded. Some people just can't handle the high-pressure life of podcasters. He drummed his fingers against his knee while he thought. Check out When Nerds Collide. They have a great episode on the Dresden Files. Adam held up a thumb. That sounds cool. I like those guys. Works for me, gentlemen. Sean fumbled with his phone and loaded the podcast. A voice came out of the car's speakers. Welcome, one and all, to When Nerds Collide. I'm Dan. And a second voice added, and I'm Tom. The first voice spoke again. And this week we're joined by a very special guest, Bruce from Hero Movie Podcast. Adam slapped a hand to his forehead and groaned. Good grief. Sean sneered at Bruce. Was this just a ploy to get us to listen to you? Bruce held his hands up by his shoulders. Hey, it's a great episode. Sean shook his head again. Nice try, buddy. He poked his phone and stopped the podcast. But it's not going to happen. Adam scratched his head with one hand while the other steered. We're looking at a 10-plus hour trip in Bruce's fuel-efficient vehicle, so we need something to pass the time. Sean pointed at the back seat. This guy is really limiting our audio options. Well, said Adam, we need to figure out something, or else this is going to be one long, boring trip. We can play license plate bingo. Bruce twisted his neck to look out the window. I see North Carolina. He pointed. There's another North Carolina. He bounced up and down in the back seat. Ooh, there's South Carolina. His eyes narrowed. North Carolina, North Carolina. He paused. North Carolina again. Bruce, I don't. Sean rubbed the back of his head. I don't think that's how you play license plate bingo. Sure it is. Bruce continued to point at passing cars. North Carolina, North Carolina, North. We're not playing license plate bingo, shouted Adam. We're not 7 years old. Bruce's shoulders drooped like a deflated balloon. He whimpered, Carolina? Come on, guys, said Sean. This can be a relaxing ride if we just look out the window and enjoy the scenery. He peered out the passenger side window. Maybe a little spontaneous conversation will pop up. Adam tilted his head. We could talk a little about the panel. Sean's face shot toward Adam and he held his hands wide. I thought we came to an understanding. That ship has sailed. Not now, said Adam. We're going to get this edge, whatever it is. He shrugged. I think we should have something on standby at the very least. I hear what you're saying. Sean turned away and stared back out the window. But I think we should just focus on this road trip. Bruce said, it's a quest. Sure, Sean threw up a hand. We could just focus on this road quest. Just call it a quest, said Bruce. Road quest sounds strange. No, it doesn't. Sean twisted to face the back seat. Road quest sounds like something Mad Max would go on. Bruce squinted one eye. Where do you come down on this, Adam? He rubbed his beard. He's almost won me over with this Mad Max argument. I think... Adam swerved mid-sentence to avoid a car that darted into the Mini Cooper's lane. He shouted, Jackholes! A brown King Cab pickup truck cut off the tiny blue car, nearly smashing into it. The tailgate sported a huge sticker with 2 horse heads above a wagon wheel, next to a sticker of a little boy peeing on a rat. The bumper bore a sticker that proclaimed the truck belonged to Teamsters Local 4077. Adam rolled down his window and shouted, "Watch where you're going, numbnuts!" Sean held up both his middle fingers and shook them at the truck. "I hate Teamsters!" Bruce asked, "Why do you hate Teamsters?" "I'm around them all the time at work," answered Sean. "They're the laziest, most racist, homophobic, unwashed, surly, foul-mouthed wastes of space you'll ever meet." "Really?" asked Bruce. "I like that Hoffa movie." He furrowed his brow. "They can't be all bad." "Trust me," said Sean. "They are. Real-life Teamsters aren't like Jack Nicholson and Danny DeVito. They're more like the loser your sister dates when her self-esteem hits rock bottom." Bruce put one hand behind his head. "You're kind of making me glad I don't have a sister." Adam narrowed his eyes and looked at Sean. "Did your sister date a Teamster?" Sean looked away from Adam. "I don't want to talk about it." "Well, it doesn't matter." Adam waved a hand above the steering wheel. "They're gone now. We don't need to worry about them." "And none too soon." Sean gritted his teeth. "Good riddance." Bruce leaned forward. "Calm down, Sean." He put a hand on his friend's shoulder. "I promise we won't see any more Teamsters for the rest of this trip." "How can you make a promise like that?" asked Sean. Bruce shrugged. "It's just a hunch. My hunches are hardly ever wrong." He rubbed his belly. "My gut tells me we won't see any more Teamsters." "For the love of all that is holy," said Sean, "I hope we don't." He paused and his lips twitched. "So help me, Crom, I hope we don't." Chapter 7. The car made its way past Atlanta like an electric blue sardine can stuffed with very nerdy fish. The traffic grew lighter as they drove past billboards advertising discount cigarettes and fireworks sold at one handy location. A white convertible Cadillac flew past, and the driver threw out a fast food soda cup that hit the Mini Cooper's windshield. Sean scowled at the soda-smeared windshield. "That's disgusting." "I know," said Adam. "Who eats at Hardee's?" Sean groaned and turned to Adam. "I was referring to the littering." "Oh, that's gross too," agreed Adam. "But Hardee's? Ugh." "I used to like Hardee's when I was a kid." Bruce twisted forward in the limited space of the rear seat. "They had good fried chicken." Adam chanced to glance over his shoulder while he drove. "Hardee's doesn't have fried chicken." "They used to," said Bruce. Sean turned in his seat and the seatbelt dug into his shoulder. "Adam, he's talking about chicken tenders." Bruce shook his head. "No, I'm not. The chicken had bones in it, just like KFC. Sean wrinkled his brow. "I think you're confused." "No, I remember." Bruce held his hands up by his shoulders. "The only fast food place in the town where I grew up was Druthers." He crossed his arms. "They got bought out by Hardee's and started serving fried chicken." "I don't know what kind of weird town you grew up in," said Adam, "but I've never gotten a chicken leg from Hardee's." "That's too bad." Bruce cocked his head to one side. "They were good." Adam said, "I'll stick with Jack in the Box." He grinned. "Give me a taco with a slice of cheese, baby." Bruce frowned. "I'm afraid to eat at Jack in the Box." Adam rolled his eyes. "Don't give me crap about the E. coli outbreak. That was 25 years ago." "It's not that." Bruce raised his eyebrows. "It's the mascot. I think it goes back to my infancy. I'm pretty sure I was traumatized by a Jack in the Box." He held his hands wide. "I mean, you're a baby. You think, oh, cool, a box with a crank on it." He twisted an imaginary crank as he spoke. "You turn the handle and get lulled into a false sense of security by the music." His hands flew into the air. "Bam! This creepy little guy jumps out at you." Sean laughed and lowered his head. "Bruce, you're ridiculous." Adam tilted his head to one side. "No, I get it. That's why I don't go to McDonald's." He drew a deep breath in through his nose. "I'm deathly afraid of Grimace." "Well, I don't eat any fast food." Sean crossed his arms and leaned to one side. "I only eat Subway." "What are you talking about?" Adam opened his eyes wide. "Subway is fast food." Bruce asked, "In London, do you think they call Subway Underground?" Sean gave his head a quick shake. "No, they call it jolly old Subway." He looked at Adam. Subway isn't fast food, it's a deli. Subway's not a deli. Adam took a hand off the steering wheel and held it by his shoulder. They have a drive-thru, for Christ's sake. Bruce put a hand on his chin. I'm with Adam. If it's got a drive-thru, it's fast food. Oh yeah, smart guy? Sean craned his neck around to better see Bruce. My bank has a drive-thru. Is it fast food? Bruce smiled and asked, They ever give you a lollipop? Sean squeezed his eyes shut and said, Every single time. He opened his eyes and faced forward. I really should have seen that coming. Touché, Bruce. He put a finger on his chin. What about my pharmacy? It has a drive-thru. They sell food, don't they? Asked Bruce. Stuff like beef jerky and trail mix. Sean swatted a hand in Bruce's direction. You have to go inside for that stuff. They don't sell it at the drive-thru. I bet they would, said Adam. I mean, if you asked them to, I don't think they would say no. No way! Sean narrowed his eyes. The drive-thru's for prescriptions only. Bruce poked his head between the front seats. I think Adam's right. If you ask them, they'll get stuff off the shelf for you. He held a finger in the air. In fact, I'll stake my honor on it. Sean drew his brows together. You'll stake your honor on it? Who says that? Did you grow up in the Renaissance? Bruce answered, I'm just saying they'll do it. He poked Adam's shoulder. Let's settle this. He pointed forward. Pull off on this exit. The town's bound to have a CVS. Sean's face twisted in confusion. Are we really taking a detour on our 11-hour road quest to determine whether or not CVS counts as fast food? Adam nodded. Sorry, Sean. He cranked the steering wheel and pulled onto the exit ramp. Bruce's honor is at stake. The Mini Cooper pulled off exit 152 and into the town of Kimball, Tennessee. Bruce looked at his phone and said, Kimball is a quaint town in Marion County with a population of 1,395 in the 2010 census. Adam grunted. Quit reading Wikipedia to us. Bruce shrugged. Old habits die hard, I suppose. After a short trip down Highway 72, they found a CVS complete with a drive-thru. The car whipped into the drugstore's parking lot and curled its way around to the window. Adam rolled down his window and pressed the button for service. A recorded voice came from the speaker box. Someone will be with you shortly. Please have your prescription ready. See, said Sean. Like I told you, this is for prescriptions only. Adam raised his eyebrows and shook his head. Oh no, this isn't over. He leaned out of the car and pounded on the drive-thru window. A petite Asian lady, with a sneer on her face and a look of impatience in her eyes, slid the door open. She lifted her head and said, Can I help you? She had a drawl that was distinct from the one heard most often in Charlotte. Adam smiled at the lady. We just wanted to know if we could get some beef jerky. The lady let out a loud huff and crossed her arms. This is the pharmacy. Her drawl grew thicker with her irritation. We know that, said Adam. Sean's face turned red. Leave the poor lady alone. She's obviously... Hold on a minute. Adam held his palm up at Sean and resumed speaking to the lady. We were just hoping you could get us some beef jerky. The lady frowned. I'm pretty sure you have to come inside for that. Sean said, See? Come on, lady, said Adam. We're three fat guys shoved in a Mini Cooper. Hey now, said Sean. Adam rolled his eyes. I'm sorry, we're two fat guys and one awkwardly tall, handsome boy shoved into this car. It's hard for us to get out and back in. Could you please get us some beef jerky? Bruce shoved his head and one shoulder into the front of the car. My honor's at stake. The lady arched an eyebrow. I'll have to ask my manager. She slid the window shut with far more force than was necessary. Bruce leaned back into the rear seat. Here comes the moment of truth. You guys are unbelievable. Sean looked out the passenger window and shook his head. This is a royal waste of time. Adam smirked. You're bitter because you're about to be proven wrong. The Asian lady returned and slid the window open. She had a large bag of beef jerky in her hand. Adam pumped his fist in the air and shouted, Yes! Bruce held his hands wide and leaned back his head. My honor is intact! The lady frowned and said, That'll be $10.60. Adam's face turned pale. Oh, we don't want to buy it. He forced his mouth into an uncomfortable smile. We just wanted to know if we could buy it. The lady slammed the beef jerky down on the counter. I've had enough of you buttholes. You better get out of here before I call the sheriff. Adam bobbed his head up and down in a fast, nervous nod. Yes, ma'am. He rolled up his window and punched the accelerator. Bruce asked, Do you think she was really going to call the sheriff? I don't know, Adam shrugged. She looked pretty serious. What would be the charge? Asked Sean. Breach of beef jerky purchase contract? I don't know, man, said Bruce. They might bust us for loitering or something. Well, we don't have to worry about that now. Sean rubbed the back of his head. We should avoid any more stupid side quests and focus on getting to Arkansas. We need to find this edge, whatever it is. We have to defend Jonah Hex and make this the best superhero con ever. Bruce said, I'm sure we can make it a great one, but it'll be hard to make it the best ever. He shrugged. For me, at least. Sean smiled and tried the best he could to lean back in his cramped seat. Now this seems like a fine way to pass the time, he asked. What was your favorite superhero con? Bruce blushed and sported a sheepish grin. I don't know if I should talk about it. I've always kept it a secret. Come on, fella, said Sean. Your secret's safe with us. We're your friends. Inside this car is a zone of safety, added Adam. It was 13 years ago. Bruce rubbed his beard and looked out the Mini Cooper's rear window. The first superhero con I ever went to. I'll never forget it. I remember it well, said Adam. Bruce continued. I was overwhelmed. All my favorite writers and artists were there, more back issues than I could dig through in 100 lifetimes. Even Lou Ferrigno made an appearance. Sean smiled and nodded. Big Lou! And in the middle of all the spectacle, I saw something special in the corner of my eye. Bruce paused for a moment, lost in pleasant thought. It was Shirley from What's Happening. He nodded his head slowly. I knew at once why that show had 2 exclamation points in the title. Oh, I remember her, said Sean. She was the best cosplayer ever. She looked exactly like Shirley Hemphill. Adam grinned. She's chiseled in my memory as well. To me, she wasn't cosplaying, said Bruce. She was Shirley from What's Happening. He ran a hand through his short, dark hair. So I decided to say hi. I walked up to her and started doing my rerun dance. You guys know the one. Adam nodded. You're good at dancing like Rerun. He's the best, added Sean. She must have liked it, said Bruce. She asked me if I wanted to split a corn dog. Look at you. Sean grinned and looked at Bruce. Did you split that corn dog? Bruce shook his head. I told her I didn't want to split one, but I'd be happy to buy her a couple to eat in my presence. That's a baller move, said Adam. Bruce clasped his hands together and let them rest on his lap. After she finished the corn dogs in what I'm sure was record time, she had a little mustard on her nose. He gently touched a finger to the end of his nose. I wiped it off with the bottom of my Spawn t-shirt, and while I was close to her, she wrapped her thick, squishy arms around me. His hand fell to his side. Next thing you know, she dragged me into a janitor's closet, and let's just say she showed me what's happening. Hey, 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 shouted Sean. Are you lying about this? Bruce opened his eyes. No! Why do you think I would lie about that? It's just... Sean closed his eyes and squeezed the bridge of his nose. That same year, I said hi to Shirley from What's Happening as well. He opened his eyes. I asked her if she wanted to arm wrestle, and she told me she'd rather hip wrestle. We snuck off behind the curtains in the autograph area, and I guess she showed me what's happening now. What? Bruce sat upright. You defiled my sweet heavenly cloud muffin? I'm sorry, buddy. Sean looked back to Bruce. I had no idea about you and her. You never told me. Bruce narrowed his eyes and glared at Sean. That's low, man. I would expect something like that from Adam, but not you. Sean held out his hands. How was I supposed to know? Adam drummed his fingers against the steering wheel. Guys, I don't know how to tell you this. Bruce clenched his hand into a fist. Just say it. Adam nodded. I also hooked up with Shirley from What's Happening that year. Really? Asked Sean. How? Adam shrugged. She just came up behind me and grabbed me by the waist. She dragged me into the ladies' room, and one thing led to another. Bruce lowered his face and shook his head. I thought what we had was special. Sean said, Me too. We all did, added Adam. Bruce crossed his arms and leaned back. Too bad we'll probably never see her again. Those were good times. Sean shook his head. Good Times was a totally different show. He smiled. There'll never be another Shirley like Shirley from What's Happening. Chapter 8. It was dark when the electric blue car pulled into the gas station somewhere west of Nashville. The fuel gauge was on empty, and the fellows inside desperately needed to straighten out their limbs after several cramped hours of traveling. Adam and Sean climbed out of their respective doors, and Bruce crawled forth from the unfriendly confines of the rear seat. Bruce rubbed his head. "I'll gas it up." He grabbed the gas nozzle from the pump, and at once realized the gas tank was on the opposite side of the vehicle. He raised the nozzle high and walked around the car, draping the hose over its low roof. He plunged the nozzle into the tank's opening. Sean said, "We're not exactly making good time, but we're only a couple of hours from the river." Adam stood up straight and stretched. Multiple bones in his body popped and cracked at once. Sean stretched as well, then looked down at his sneakers. "Folded up in that seat, I haven't seen my feet all day." He looked up and smiled. "It's good to know my Adidas are still there." Adam looked at Sean with a smirk. "Would it matter if they weren't? You have 73 more pairs back at the apartment." "Watch how you talk about my sneakers." Sean shot a stern look at his friend. "They aren't just shoes, they're my children." Bruce looked up at the early night sky. It was clear with a few stars starting to emerge, and the moon hung low. He said, "This seems like the kind of place where people see UFOs." Sean furrowed his brow. "What do you mean?" "Kind of in the middle of nowhere," answered Bruce. "It's sort of boring, and there's nobody to bust you on your lie." Adam arched an eyebrow. "You don't believe in UFOs?" he said. "I'm telling you, the truth is out there." Bruce shrugged. "I don't believe in UFOs." He continued pumping the gas nonchalantly. Sean wrinkled his forehead and his mouth hardened. "Last night, we watched a teenager summon a demon and pay it with Red Bull. And you're telling me you don't believe in aliens?" Bruce held up a finger. "I didn't say I don't believe in aliens. I just don't believe in UFO stories from the middle of East BFE. Adam held out his hands. "So you think all these people with similar stories are lying?" "Pretty much," answered Bruce. "And it's always the same boring story. They claim some indistinct gray or green humanoid took them away and poked stuff in their tuchus." He rubbed his beard. "Just once, I'd like to hear something interesting. If I got abducted, I'd want it to be by Alf." He let his hand fall from his chin. "He'd come all the way from Melmac and pick me up in his ship." He raised his eyebrows. "Maybe he would demand I take him to a cat farm." Sean frowned and tilted his head. "Bruce, I don't think cat farms are a thing." Adam shrugged. "Well, people have cats. They have to come from somewhere. Why not a cat farm?" "See, Adam's with me," said Bruce. "I had a cat when I was a kid. It just kind of showed up." He grinned. "I named her DeBrew." Sean looked at Bruce and asked, "What kind of name is that?" "I got it from an old Gary Coleman movie," Bruce answered. "He played a kid that loved baseball so much he named his cat after Joe DiMaggio and Babe Ruth. He called it DeBrew." He asked, "Did you guys ever have a cat?" He paused, then added, "Did you buy it from a cat farm?" "We had a cat," answered Adam. "I think an aunt gave it to us." Sean said, "We had a cat too, but I'm not sure where it came from." "See," said Bruce, "cats have to come from somewhere, but I have no idea where it is. So I just assumed cat farm." "There have to be cat breeders." Sean brought a hand to his chin. "Because there are breeds of cats." His hand left his chin and waved through the night air. "You know, like Persians and Siamese." Bruce nodded. "And don't forget those creepy zombie cats that don't have fur." "Yeah, zombie cats too." Adam crossed his arms. "But now that you mention it, I don't think I've ever known anybody who bought a cat." Sean shook his head. "I'll let you guys figure it out. I need to pee and get some snacks." He asked, "Do you want me to get you anything, Bruce?" Bruce shook his head. "No thanks, I'll go in when I'm done pumping gas." Sean smiled and nodded. "Okie dokie." He took a step forward, but the sound of screeching tires froze him in his tracks. A brown king cab pickup truck slid into the gas station and skidded to a stop between the guys and the convenience store. It pinned in the three men with the island of pumps to their backs. The sticker of a little boy peeing on a rat made it all too clear this wasn't just any truck. This was the Teamsters. The doors on the truck swung open and three surly Teamsters slid out. They were dressed nearly identically. Their guts bulged against their untucked gray work shirts, and they had matching mesh back caps bearing the Teamsters horsehead logos atop their heads. Bushy brown mustaches adorned their upper lips, and 5 o'clock shadows graced their cheeks and chins. Their lower bodies were garbed in faded blue jeans held up by worn leather belts, and they were shod in surprisingly untarnished work boots. In fact, the boots were so clean, one could be forgiven for assuming that these guys had never done any actual work. They stood shoulder to shoulder and glowered at Adam, Sean, and Bruce. The teamster on the right said, "Look what we have here. Those nerds who thought they were tough back in Carolina." The one in the middle pointed at Sean. "That skinny guy poked his middle fingers at us." The one on the left just snarled. Adam stiffened his jaws and spoke through clenched teeth. "You jerks cut us off. We could have wrecked." The teamster on the right looked at his companions. "Did you hear that? He called us jerks." He put his hands together and cracked his knuckles. Bruce cowered against the Mini Cooper. "I'm afraid it's going to happen." His shoulders shook and sweat accumulated on his face. "I don't want the other guy to show up." Sean stepped closer to Bruce and put a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Keep calm, buddy. We'll be okay." He glanced at the teamsters, then back to Bruce. "We haven't seen the other guy in over a year. Let's keep it that way." Bruce nodded and whimpered out a feeble, "Okay." Sean took his hand off Bruce and stepped toward the teamsters. "Look, guys, we're sorry. Just go about your business and leave us alone." He pointed back to Bruce. "Our friend has a nervous condition." "Oh, yeah?" said the teamster on the right. He stepped forward and shoved Sean hard in the chest. Adam darted forward and shoved the teamster back. The teamster wrapped his arm around Adam's neck and squeezed. Adam bent over in the teamster's clutch and found himself gripped in a powerful headlock. His glasses fell off his face and tumbled to the oily asphalt. The teamster balled one hand into a fist and rubbed his knuckles against the top of Adam's skull, giving the trapped man a vicious noogie. Sean threw his fist at the teamster in the middle in a wide, arcing haymaker. The teamster sidestepped the punch and caught Sean's arm. He twisted the arm to spin its owner around, then curled it up into a painful arm bar. Sean shouted, "Ouch! Ouch! Ouch! Ouch!" He closed his eyes and felt his body slam against the truck. The teamster on the left, whose only means of communication appeared to be snarling, grabbed Bruce by the shoulders and spun the whimpering man around. Bruce cried out, "No! No, please! Dear Lord, no!" He sobbed as he pleaded. "Don't make me unhappy! You won't like me when I'm unhappy!" He squealed. "I have a nervous condition!" The snarling teamster continued to snarl despite Bruce's plea for mercy. He thrust both his hands toward the belt line of the man he tormented. His fingers dug into the waistband of his victim's underwear like the talons of an eagle sinking into its prey. The attacker grunted and pulled up on Bruce's underwear with all his might. This wedgie was epic. Bruce sobbed openly as he pleaded with his attacker. "Please, please stop, it hurts my tenders." The snarling teamster allowed himself a laugh at his victim's expense as the elastic waistband on the tighty-whities ripped free of the garment it supported. Bruce's torso jerked violently as he convulsed against the front fender of the Mini Cooper. He swayed and spun around to reveal both his eyes had rolled up so far only the whites remained exposed. He wobbled side to side, unsteady on his feet, while drool leaked from one corner of his mouth and oozed into his beard. The snarling teamster took a step back and kicked Bruce's leg out from under him. Bruce fell forward when the teamster's boot crashed into his calf. He slammed face first to the asphalt and lay parallel to his fuel-efficient car. He squeezed his eyes shut, and when he opened them, the right one was pointing to the side while the left one focused straight ahead. His nostrils flared wide, and he growled. A discarded cigar butt that lay beneath the car caught his attention. He scooped the old cigar up in his right hand and bounced to his feet. The snarling teamster shouted, "What the?" Bruce balled his left hand into a fist and tossed the crushed cigar remnant into his mouth. "It looks like somebody's mama was too busy entertaining sailors to teach her son some manners." He bit down on the cigar and pointed. "Lucky for you, I'm darn good at teaching lessons to little pukes." The snarling teamster snarled, then said, "It looks to me like you just came back for some more humiliation." He balled up his fists and took a step forward. "Check it out. This smelly fart is bringing his poodle to a bear fight." Bruce pointed at himself with his thumb. "I think some introductions are in order, broccoli breath. I'm Dick Gunfighter, and these are my friends." He held up his right fist. "Pepe," he swung his left fist up beside the right, "and Le Pew." The other two teamsters released their holds on Sean and Adam and stood at either side of the snarling guy. All three laughed at the man who called himself Gunfighter. "You think it's funny?" asked Bruce. "You're about to get skunked by these little stinkers." He buried a fist into the snarling teamster's gut, then spun around and slammed his elbow into the crotch of the teamster on the left. The two men doubled over with the pain of the blows. The third teamster clenched his teeth and swung his right fist at Dick Gunfighter's head. Bruce ducked under the punch and spun toward the rear of the Mini Cooper. When he stopped spinning, he said, "It's a shame the fight has to end." He stood holding the gas nozzle in both hands. The man pointed it at the teamsters as if it were Dirty Harry's .44 Magnum. "It's been a gas." He pulled back the lever and sprayed the teamsters with at least $8 worth of regular unleaded. The teamsters held up their hands to shield their eyes from the noxious fluid. They hacked and coughed as they struggled to breathe against the spray and its fumes. "Pretty boy," said Bruce with an open hand extended toward Sean, "give me your lighter." Sean's face twisted in equal parts confusion and disgust. I don't think that's a good idea." Bruce snapped the fingers on his extended hand. "I asked you for your flint box, not your opinion, Myrtle." "But it's my good lighter," pleaded Sean. "It's the one that says F communism." Bruce grunted and looked at the petroleum-soaked teamsters. "So, what's it gonna be, kumquats? You gonna run away while you can, or wait for my associate to grow a pair and give me his lighter?" The teamsters wasted no time scurrying back into the King Cab pickup truck. The driver cranked the engine and dropped his foot on the accelerator, leaving a plume of smoke in the vehicle's wake as it sped away. Bruce shouted at the fleeing teamsters, "Not everybody gets off so easy when they tangle with Dick Gunfighter." Adam retrieved his glasses from the asphalt. "The trouble's over. We need our buddy back." Bruce opened his mouth to speak, and a blank expression washed over his face. The cigar butt tumbled out of his mouth, and he dropped the gas nozzle. Adam and Sean ran toward their friend. Bruce convulsed again, then folded to the ground. He twitched a bit as he lay on the asphalt. Sean knelt down and placed a hand on Bruce's shoulder. Adam stooped next to Sean and watched with his hands resting against his knees. Bruce stopped twitching and let out a whimper. He asked, "What happened? What did I do? Oh, God, did he show up?" Sean patted his friend's shoulder. "It's okay now. It's all over." He looked at Adam. "Help me get him to his feet." Sean and Adam helped Bruce climb into the Mini Cooper's back seat. "Take it easy," said Adam. "Just try to rest." Sean added, "See if you can get some sleep. By the time you wake up, we'll be in Arkansas." Bruce closed his eyes and took great comfort in the fact that when he opened them, he would, in fact, be in Arkansas. Chapter 9. Bruce opened his eyes. Through the rear window of the electric blue Mini Cooper, he saw bright lights flashing against the black night sky. He asked, "Where are we?" "Mississippi," answered Adam. "What?" Bruce rubbed his eyes. "Why are we in Mississippi?" Sean answered, "While you were sleeping, we decided it would do us a little good to blow off some steam." Bruce furrowed his brow and sat up. "In Mississippi?" Adam nodded. "We're in Tunica. They have casinos here." Bruce tilted his head. "Do we even gamble?" "No, not really," Sean shrugged. "But we can grab a drink and take in the sights." "It's only 40 miles from Memphis," added Adam. "Whatever," said Bruce. "I guess it couldn't hurt." Adam parked the car and the three men climbed out. They were in front of an ornate building with flashing lights and a large sign proclaiming it Lucky Larry's Gold-Plated Resort. There was a marquee just below the sign boasting Deep South Wrestling every Saturday. Fortunately for the group, it was Thursday. They passed through the revolving door made up of glass framed with shiny brass and made their way to the nearest bar. All the stools were empty, and a tall, thick man with slick black hair looked bored as he tended the bar. Adam, Sean, and Bruce perched atop the three stools in the middle. The barkeep sighed and looked at his new customers. "What can I get you?" Adam clasped his hands together and rested them on the bar. "I'll take a no-da hop, drop, and roll." The barkeep wrinkled his forehead. "Cannabis isn't legal in Mississippi." Adam groaned. "It's an IPA, brewed in Charlotte. I'll take a tall boy if you got it." The barkeep looked at Sean. "How about you? Do you want one of those hip-hop arrays also?" Sean smiled and shook his head. "No, sir. I'll have a white chocolate martini with a half sprig of fresh mint." The barkeep's eyes went to Bruce. "Let me guess. You want something that's a royal pain in my rear, too." "I just want a soda," said Bruce. "Thank you," said the barkeep. "What kind?" "A caffeine-free Diet Cherry Vanilla Dr. Pepper," answered Bruce. A low growl rumbled in the barkeep's chest. "I don't have any of those drinks. Now try again." Adam opened his mouth to place another order, but was cut short. "I swear," the barkeep pointed a thick finger at Adam, "if the next words out of your mouth are something weird, I'm going to slug you in the face." Adam frowned and said, "Bud Light." Sean said, "Scotch on the rocks." "Any particular kind of scotch?" The barkeep raised one eyebrow as he asked the question. Sean opened his mouth to speak, then closed it and thought for a moment before he said, "Well, we'll be fine." The barkeep nodded at Bruce. "Can I have a club soda?" asked Bruce. "Sure can." The barkeep turned to retrieve the drinks. Adam turned to his companions. "It's kind of dead here. I was expecting a little more action." "Give it time." Sean looked over his shoulder and surveyed the casino. "I'm sure it'll pick up soon." The barkeep set the drinks on the bar in front of the three men. Bruce asked, "Is it always this slow at the bar?" "No," answered the barkeep. "It's on account of the comedy contest. Everybody's downstairs in the comedy club." Adam raised his eyebrows. "What kind of comedy contest?" "I don't know." The barkeep shrugged. "Kind of an open mic style. Anybody can sign up. The winner gets $50. The barkeep turned his back to the men and found something to do other than talk to his customers. Adam rubbed his chin. "Guys, our Patreon funds are getting a little low." He crossed his arms and leaned back on his stool. "We could use that $50. Bruce scratched his head. "You want to enter the comedy contest?" "Why not?" Adam held his hands wide. "The worst that could happen is I lose." "I don't know, Adam." Sean narrowed his eyes and the corners of his mouth drooped. "You're kind of a hate-fueled comic. That might not play so well in a contest." Bruce's face lit up with an idea and he pointed at Sean. "Hey, what about you? You've got the most experience." "I'm not sure." Sean smiled and put a hand on his chest. "It might not be fair for me to compete." "Come on." Bruce put his elbow on the bar and leaned against it. "You're the only one of us that's ever had a paying gig." "Normally, I find this sort of thing beneath me." Sean sat tall on the stool and his head swayed as he talked. "But if it helps out our road quest, I'll do it for the team." "Well, let's hop to it." Adam grabbed his beer and bounced off his stool. Sean and Bruce followed him as he walked across the casino. They found a sign above some narrow stairs that read, "This way to the ICU, Intensive Comedy Unit." They descended the stairs. At the bottom of the stairs, they were met by a surly black man in a tight yellow T-shirt who sat on a stool. He said, "Cover is $5. "Oh," said Adam, "we're here to enter the contest." The yellow-shirted man nodded and pointed. "Go backstage and sign the sheet." They walked in the indicated direction. It took them to an area beside the small stage that was obscured from the audience by a black curtain. Sean wrote his name on a sheet of paper attached to a clipboard that dangled from a chain on the wall. The group joined the lone person waiting behind the curtain. The man who stood there waiting had red hair parted on the side and freckles scattered across his cheeks. He wore a blue jacket over a white dress shirt and a skinny blue tie. Adam smiled at the man and asked, "Hey, Richie, did Potsy and Ralph go see the Fawns without you?" The red-haired man shot Adam a confused look. Sean grimaced. "Don't mind him." He waved a hand toward Adam. "He's a butthole." Bruce nodded in agreement. "Honestly, Opie, he can't help it." The red-haired man narrowed his eyes and glared at Bruce. "Did you just call me Opie?" "No offense," answered Bruce. "I loved American Graffiti." The red-haired man smiled. "That's kind of the look I'm going for." Bruce extended his hand. "I'm Bruce." "Pleased to meet you." The red-haired man took Bruce's hand and shook it. "My name's Vincent." He asked, "Are you in the contest tonight?" "No," answered Bruce. He poked his thumb in Sean's direction. "My friend is. His name's Sean." "Hi there." Sean stuck out his hand. Vincent shook Sean's hand. "A pleasure to meet you." His grip grew tight and he bared his teeth. The red-haired man's eyes bulged and the network of veins on their whites pulsated. "Prepare to be destroyed! This is my house!" He growled more than spoke. Sean yanked his hand free and leaped back. "Jesus!" "Be quiet," ordered Vincent. "The MC's coming out." The host walked on stage and stood behind the microphone perched on a simple black stand. He wore a yellow bow tie and a gray houndstooth blazer with leather patches on the elbow. The host pulled the mic from the stand and addressed the crowd. "Hey, all you rascals! Welcome to the ICU's Thursday Night Comedy Contest!" A smattering of applause came up from the audience. Every small round table was occupied by a crowd that contained every shade of gray hair imaginable. The people's heads ranged from silver to pale blue to bald, and a little more than half the audience appeared to be ladies. The host continued, "I'm Billy Mertz, but feel free to call me Wild Bill." A blue-haired lady called out, "Like the cowboy." "That's right," said the host. "I've got something really special for you tonight." He paused in an attempt to build suspense. "We actually have contestants this week." A polite chuckle came up from the crowd. "I guess Vincent thought he was going to win by default for the 12th week in a row," continued the host. "But this week he has some stiff competition." He glanced at the men standing behind the curtain, then back to the crowd. "Well, it's competition at least." A couple of more chuckles were offered up. The host placed the microphone back into the stand and held his hands wide. "Now give a warm ICU welcome to hometown favorite Vincent Tubman." The crowd clapped politely as Vincent walked on stage and stood behind the microphone. Adam, Sean, and Bruce huddled together at the curtain's edge to watch the set. Vincent smiled and began. "My wife and I have been married for 15 years. For our anniversary, I took her to the same hotel as our honeymoon." He paused for a moment, then continued. "Only this time, I was the one who went in the closet and cried." Two people in the audience giggled. "Sheesh," said Sean. "I can smell the mothballs on that joke." Bruce said, "Naphthalene." "Huh?" said Sean. "Naphthalene gives mothballs their smell," answered Bruce. Vincent began another zinger. "People ask me how I made it work for 15 years. I tell them the secret is we go out to a nice restaurant twice a week." He paused again. "She goes Tuesdays and I go Fridays." "I've heard that before." Bruce furrowed his brow and looked at Adam. "Is that a Rodney Dangerfield joke?" Adam shook his head. "That's way too hacky for Dangerfield." Vincent continued his set. "For our anniversary, my wife wanted a fur coat and I wanted a car. We compromised. She got a fur coat and keeps it in the garage." Adam arched an eyebrow. "Wait a minute." He put a hand on his chin. Vincent said, "I've been in love with the same woman for 15 years, but don't tell my wife. If she finds out, she'll kill me." "Henny!" shouted Adam. "Henny Youngman!" He ran on stage and pointed at Vincent. "This man's doing Henny Youngman jokes, and I don't think he's even Jewish." Vincent stood quietly with a nervous smile on his face. "I demand you disqualify this man," said Adam. "He's a joke thief." He tilted his head and thought for a moment. "Strike that. Those jokes are so old they're in the public domain." Vincent scowled at Adam. Adam scowled back. The host trotted back to the microphone and shooed the two scowling men off stage. Adam returned to his spot behind the curtain. Vincent stormed out of the club and back up the stairs leading to the casino. The host leaned close to the microphone. "I think Vincent's taking an early bow tonight." He held a hand out toward the end of the stage. "Now our next contestant, Shane Kenner." Sean marched onto the stage and ripped the microphone off the stand with exaggerated force. "I'm Sean Koufax, North Carolina's greatest treasure." The elderly audience tilted their heads and furrowed their brows in unison. Sean strolled across the stage as he spoke. "We've all got personal heroes, don't we?" A man leaning against his walker shrugged. Sean smiled and continued. "A personal hero says a lot about you. Like, if I'm talking to a 35-year-old dude and that guy tells me his hero is Spider-Man, he's just told me something about himself." He held up a finger. "Number 1, he's never seen a naked lady up close." He held up another finger. "Number 2, he's probably never done his own taxes." And he held up a third finger. "And 3, we should hang out because I totally love Spider-Man." An old lady coughed. Sean sighed and persevered. "If a lady tells you her personal hero is Mother Teresa, she just told you that she's a fumigating liar." A woman with pale blue hair sneered and shouted, "Mother Teresa was a nice lady." Sean winced and continued. "No one would ever trade positions with Mother Teresa when she was alive. Mother Teresa used to hang out all day with lepers in India." He waved a hand in front of his nose. "India smells bad enough without the person standing next to you rotting." A man with brown skin and white hair stood up. He spoke with a hint of an accent that suggested he was, perhaps, Indian. India is a beautiful place. It smells of honey and flowers. India is... Sit down, Sandeep, shouted a shriveled lady at the next table. I lost Uncle Zeke to leprosy. The man returned to his seat and glowered at the old lady. I'm sorry, said Sean. Comedy should bring people together. That's right. If there's one thing we can all get behind, it's that Sarah Jessica Parker is the ugliest woman in Hollywood. The crowd's only response was silence. Sean cleared his throat. Sarah Jessica Parker answers the question, I wonder what it would look like if a zombie and Abraham Lincoln had a baby, and then that baby ended up looking a little bit like a man. A cricket chirped. Was that a cricket? Asked Sean. Is there an actual cricket in this geriatric excuse for a comedy club? He looked at the table in the front row where the host sat. What kind of establishment are you running here? Doesn't the Orkin man know how to get to Tunica? The burly man in the yellow shirt stepped on stage and gave Sean a cold stare. Sean smiled. That's my set, everybody. He dropped the mic and ran off stage as he shouted, Burn in Hades! Backstage, Adam said, I think I figured out this crowd. He looked at Bruce. I would say you're the oldest young person I know, but let's be honest, you're middle-aged. He shoved Bruce hard toward the microphone. Bruce stumbled onto the stage. He smiled and waved at the onlookers. Hi, nice to meet you. A lady looked across her table to a bald man. What a polite young fellow. I think I like him better than that last scallywag. The man shook his bald head. He was worse than a scallywag. He was a carpetbagger. Bruce picked up the microphone from the stage and put it back on the stand. He leaned close to it and said, A solar calculator is the perfect gift for people who enjoy doing math outdoors. A few enthusiastic chuckles rang out. Someone said, It's true. They can't work without sunlight. Bruce stood with his arms straight down at his sides. I can't tell you how many times I've been outside in the middle of April watching flowers bloom and thought, boy, this sure would be a great place to do some calculus. More laughs came from the audience. The man with the walker grinned and said, Listen to you. Nobody likes math better than daisies. In a deadpan tone, Bruce said, I bet vampires don't like solar calculators. The crowd answered with bigger laughs. Someone struggled through laughter to call out, Vampires can't go in the sun. Bruce surveyed the crowd and a slight smile crept across his face. It may be hard to believe, but I'm single. An old lady in the front row said, I'll have to introduce you to my Maggie. There's a reason I'm single, said Bruce. I was given impossible standards when I was a child. It's not fair, but I am a product of my environment. He held his hands up by his shoulders. I was raised on the Golden Girls, and they don't make them like that anymore. The audience roared in amusement. An old lady shouted, I'm a Dorothy. Her table mate said, I'm a Blanche. Someone in the back of the room shouted, Blanche is a slut. The self-proclaimed Blanche looked over her shoulder and winked. You know it, cowboy. If I ever met a Golden Girl, continued Bruce, I'd have the perfect pickup line. I'd walk right up to her and say, Thank you for being a friend. A lady in the front row threw her head back and clapped. That's the theme song! The host jumped up on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a winner! Put your hands together for... He looked at Bruce and cocked his head to one side. Buddy, what's your name? Bruce smiled. Bruce. The host turned back to the crowd. Put your hands together for Bruce! I hope you've enjoyed this installment of Nerdspawn Genesis. Another installment should be available super duper quickly. A reminder, you can purchase the ebook or paperback of Nerdspawn Genesis on Amazon. There should be a link in the show notes. Also, you can check out my other novels, Dragon in the Needles, Dragon in Gallus, Dragon in the Darklands. You can check those out by picking up the paperbacks individually or the ebook omnibus version, Dragon Blinder, on Amazon. And of course, there's also Chubby Wizard, Wrath of the Manticore, available as both ebook and paperback on Amazon. My author link is amazon.com/author/Bruce Leslie. I'll try to put a link to that in the show notes. You can email me at laundryroombruce@gmail.com. That's laundryroombruce, all words spelled just like you think, @gmail.com. I am at HV Podcast on Twitter, Heroes and Villains Podcast on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram, but to be honest, there ain't nothing to see there. So I hope to see you again soon in the world of Nerdspawn.